My name is Alfred Biehler. I work for Google, or we call ourselves Googlers. Let me just set your expectation low. I know nothing about healthcare, and in fact, my day job has got nothing to do with this either. But I've got a passion that I will share with you today, and I'm grateful for Google for giving me a chance to do this and share with you this passion. I'm also a dad. I've got 3 beautiful kids, and they are all miracles, as I guess all kids are. But in some ways, I also want to say thank you to you for making it possible for me to have kids. I know that you contributed to that. And yes, I am indeed a geek, and I play with things like home automation to the frustration of my wife and everybody else that ever venture into our house. So, the agenda. Why am I here? I think that today is probably my best opportunity of my life to influence lives, to help save lives by addressing you with these ideas. I'm going to tackle it in 3 chunks. First, I'm going to talk about technology changes that I think you could leverage and you can play on. I think that might be the exciting bit that most of you want to hear about, but I don't think that's the most important bit. The second chunk of my presentation is talking about how we think and how we behave. And I want to spend a bit of time there to encourage you to do more of what we've already heard in the previous keynotes as well. And then lastly, I want to spend a little bit of time, not too much, on the future. Crystal ball gazing. Where are we going? So that's the plan. So let me start by telling you the story of this young man, 14 years old, Meher Gary Melan. He won the Google Science Project Fair Prize last year with this thing in his hand. It is a quadcopter, so think a helicopter with 4 propellers, and it's really a toy. You can buy these toys for about £25 in the shop, and my son has got one. But what Meher did, which was quite interesting, is he went on holiday with his family, and I don't know about your homes, but in the Biehler household, when we go on holiday, the last few minutes is not a relaxing sitting down, drinking a nice cup of tea. It tends to be a mad rush to find the passports and the tickets and so on. So when they left for holiday, they didn't pack away the fruit that was in the fruit bowl on the table. And when they returned, there was another family there, a family of fruit flies. And Meher's dad thought he'll, I was nearly said bribe, but I mean encourage the kids by saying he'll give them a cent for each fruit fly that they can swat. And Meher tried that, but kept on missing. And then this curiosity question that was also quotient, but that he's been talking about, kicked in, and he got distracted. And he thought, why is it that these fruit flies are so hard to catch? Just a side note, us as humans are good at getting distracted, and we should embrace that. That's a fantastic skill. So he got distracted in this, and eventually ended up reprogramming the quadcopter to mimic the behavior of these fruit flies. The fruit fly can sort of miss the swat within 288 milliseconds, despite the fact that the fruit fly's brain is probably about 100,000 neurons only, which is equivalent to mine, but I understand about a millionth of yours. And that's despite the fact that the fruit fly eye is probably equivalent to about 26 by 26 megapixel, 26 by 26 pixel camera. So really low resolution eye. So yes, it's an inspirational story about this young man that's building quadcopters that can in the future help us avoid obstacles, maybe deliver things for us at home. But I think this quadcopter story in general tells us about the changes we've witnessed over the last few years in technology. And I will sum them up with these 4 things. I think technology made things smaller. Technology has become cheaper and cheaper, this quadcopter being 25 quid. And I think technology has made us more connected to each other. So both on a technical level, we call it the Internet of Things, where the fridge can start to talk to the dishwasher, but also people to people, human to human. And there's beautiful things happening on the back of that. But there's also a lot of smartness that are starting to surface because of what technology can do. Let me just explain what I mean by smart. I think Where we've got a lot of data and a lot of processing power, there's some incredible things that can surface if you combine those two in the right ways. So let me just briefly pause and say, why did this happen? Why did technology so dramatically change? And I think the answer is mobile phones. I think mobile phones drove a lot of these things, a lot of this development in technology. Can I just see a raise of hands? Who of you have got a toothbrush or access to one? Okay, that's encouraging. Only a few people in the front row. So it's an old statistic, but there are more mobile phones on this planet than toothbrushes. We are getting to the point where there are more people with internet access than people with toothbrushes. So the mobile phone and the development there really meant that suddenly getting technology that can talk to satellites that are connected to mobile phone towers, that knows about its orientation, whether it's this way or that way, and knows the speed that it's moving, all of those things becomes incredibly cheap and easy to build and produce now because of the scale. Let me give you a personal story that's really sitting with me, and I'm reminded of it as I came to Excel. About 2 years ago, I was at a science fair for kids, again, another one of those opportunities where I just followed my dream and came to the kids' fair, even though I'm just a kid at heart. And it was in this very hall in Excel where there was a booth, and I was standing at the booth and talking to people, and a young girl of about 9 years old came past, and we started to have a conversation, and she told me her personal story. Now, she wasn't a prize winner. She wasn't there to present her research. She just walked past. Her brother is disabled, and her task is to watch him. When he walks too far away from home, she needs to grab him and bring him back. And when he falls over, she needs to help him up. So she built an app on her Android phone with App Inventor, with a few clicks. And she put it on a cheap mobile phone in her brother's back pocket. And as soon as her brother falls over, the app would call home. Or as soon as her brother walks too far away, the app would call home. And that freed her up. That gave her freedom to actually pursue her own dreams and do more stuff, play more, learn more. So the technology has really enabled a ton of lovely things. Let me just move on. I'll share with you a few examples of some of the Google developments and also other developments that highlights this. This is no longer new news, so I'm not announcing anything great today, unfortunately. But this is called Google Iris. It's a bit of technology that Google built. What you see is a contact lens on a finger. On the contact lens, there are 2 or 3 chips, microchips, and there's also some copper rings. Now, the purpose of the copper rings, twofold. On the one hand, it catches energy, and on the other hand, it transmits data. Purpose of the 2 chips, they are responsible for measuring the glucose levels in the tear. So the idea is, if you, for example, would give this to a diabetes patient, rather than asking the patient to prick themselves, draw blood 4 times a day, and get rough measurements, this can measure the glucose levels twice a second for continuous evaluation and send that information to a mobile phone. Technology becoming smaller. Let me tell you about another innovation at Google. We call it the Google nanoparticle platform. This essentially, as it was explained to me in layman's terms, we take a nanoparticle, a tiny, tiny thing that sort of thousands of them can fit in the size of a red blood cell, and we, as you would know better than I do, put markers on it so that it can identify either sodium or heart attack risk factors or other undesirable effects. And we magnetize the core of these nanoparticles so that you can take a pill, swallow the pill. These nanoparticles go throughout your body. Because they're magnetic, we can call them to a wristwatch, and we can ask them effectively, what have you seen in the body? And that, I think, will dramatically transform how medicines in the future could look. Again, smaller and better connected and smarter is illustrated to this. this is, again, a bit of old news, but I'm going to reiterate this because in my conversations during the week, I've found quite a lot of people that didn't know about this. Google search terms actually give a lot of information to us about many things. Amongst other things, anybody, including you, can go to google.com/trends and see the trends, see what people are searching for. Earlier today, I saw that chocolate cake recipes was something that was particularly popular today. Now, you could type in there sore throat, and you can see exactly how many people are searching for sore throats. And in fact, what our team and Google.org did was they started to find terms that indicate flu being a problem. And they're getting to the point where the CDC's data and Google flu trend data is actually overlapping and very similar. The only difference is that our data is available in real time. And it's not limited just to flus, and it doesn't require anybody in a hospital to actually submit information. So, great amount of information there. And let me just give you another non-Google example. There's a company called Jawbone, and they produce sort of Bluetooth headsets for mobile phones or device you can strap onto your arm that would measure either your footsteps or sleep activity. End of last year, there was an earthquake in Napa Valley, and they analyzed the aggregate data of their users, and they saw this clear correlation between the earthquake time and actually sleep patterns being interrupted. Now, I'm inspired just by the potential of actually taking collective data from multiple users and bringing it together and then being able to find the needle in the haystack that might indicate or might produce some interesting results. So I highlighted small, I highlighted the fact that things are getting smarter, I highlighted connectivity, but let me just talk briefly about the connectivity component. I know that even here in London, in the Excel hall, even right now, it might be hard to get the right data connection working. So there's a ton of people across the planet that still don't have internet connection. And Google is passionate about helping these people. We believe that if we can help provide internet access to the poorest people on the planet, or to the remotest people on the planet, we can help them integrate with society, we can help them find friends, we can help educate them, we can help them help themselves, we can help them to become active in trading. So there's a ton of value and potential there. But how do you get internet to a place where there's not even electricity? And this is Project Loon, one of Google's efforts to do that. So let me just briefly explain to you what you're seeing. That's a plastic balloon. Not quite plastic, it's degradable and it's environmental friendly. It's about 20 meters wide, and that thing floats in the stratosphere, roughly about 20 kilometers high. That's double the height that airplanes fly. And underneath it is a little platform that's got some solar panels on it to catch energy. And it's also got an equivalent of a Wi-Fi hub underneath it. And in order to move this thing, it's got a small fan, about what you would see on a computer. And the only thing the fan can do is it can push it up or down. But because we know how the winds are flowing there, we can push it up into a certain wind with a certain direction and sail it to the right place. And then we can float another one to another location so that ultimately, effectively, we cover the whole planet with good internet connectivity. So those things are already flying. That's a photo above New Zealand. And I think it's incredible to see the potential of that as it evolves. One side note on Project Loon, which I think you will find particularly valuable in this time of austerity. We at Google believe that one of the key things that can help drive innovation is constraint. So this team, when they started off with their blue sky thinking how on earth do we want to cover the planet with internet access, they artificially constrained themselves, saying whatever we build will cost less than $1,000 per balloon. And I just love that as a principle to say, okay, cost constraint, let's use that as a friend. Let's see how we can use that to our advantage. This one is not a Google example, but it's still something that has touched me personally in thinking about this. So what you see is a computer animation, a virtual girl. She's named Sweetie, this virtual girl. and she's depicting a 10-year-old Filipino girl. What a team have done in Europe is to build this virtual girl and send her out to chat rooms on the internet, in the dark corners of the internet. And this virtual person attracted a lot of unwanted attention. And I'm delighted to say that one of the outcomes of this piece of work was that more than 1,000 sexual predators was reported to the police. Now, if technology can get to the point where it can help us also solve some of the bad problems in this world, then I think that's really painting the picture of smart technology. Right, let's pause. This is the end of chapter 1. End of these 4 things that I highlighted that I think change in the technology world. And I want you to think about your world, your challenges. Have you got any big problems that you would love to solve if only you had enough money? Is it possible that technology that's become significantly cheaper can help with that? Or a problem that couldn't be solved because there wasn't enough data or enough way to collect the data or connect people together? Or where you had too much data and struggled to process it properly? Or where the technical solution was just too big? I want to encourage you to think about your problems. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to think. Can technology in some way solve some of those big problems? Eli Beer is an ambulance driver in Jerusalem. And he was frustrated by the fact that every time he drives to an accident, he would get there too late because of traffic. So he innovated. He first started to get his team to use motorcycles, and eventually ended up with an app that allows people to actually say where the problem is and broadcast that to the community, because they found that normally if there's an accident, there's a doctor somewhere nearby or an expert nearby that could help, but they just didn't know that there was an accident outside of their window and that they could save life. So I want to encourage you to think about how technology can help you move the needle on that. But let's move to the more important part of the conversation. The conversation about you and how you and your behavior and your team's behavior and the culture you create in your organizations can transform lives. I think there are 3 components to this that I want to highlight: dreaming, failing fast, and thinking big. So let's tackle them one by one. So this beautiful girl is my daughter. And that was when she was it's about 6 years ago. And I had the privilege on Monday to buy her first point shoes. And she'll be on stage dancing with the English National Youth Ballet tomorrow for the first time. Swan Lake. And thank you. And she's lying there dreaming about becoming a ballerina. Why do we stop dreaming? Why is it that the education system beat the dreaming out of us? And I appreciate that quality and predictability and the auditing processes and the policies are so necessary in your world. But don't stop dreaming. God has made each one of you so special. Each one of you have got different talents, different capabilities from the person next to you, different things that interest you. And I want to encourage you to not forget that. Dream. Follow your passions. I'll go as far as this. I don't expect that to be the case in this audience, but for the people that are working in your teams, if anybody don't like what they're doing, they should move on quickly to something that do fire them up and get them passionate about something. I think if I look at my own life, wherever I invest in the things that I'm passionate about, it creates so much energy in me, and it allows me to do so much more. So I do want to encourage you to follow your dreams, to dream, to follow your passions. So this is the second of the 3 behaviors that I want to encourage. I want to talk about failing fast, but before I get there, let me just briefly touch on innovation, because the light bulb tends to talk about innovation. And I know that some people feel innovation, so I've heard some negative comments saying, well, we keep on innovating, but nothing happens. So I believe that innovation is really turning an idea into life. And that's true in the business world, but it's even more true in your world. So yes, there's plenty of great discussions at the conference about innovation, and I want to encourage you to follow that. But what stops us? What is it that prevents us from moving forward, from innovating? Any offers out of the audience? I'll tell you what I think. I think the fear of failure is what's stopping us most of the time. In Google, we've got a lot of conversations about failure. And in fact, there's a beautiful blog by a friend of mine that talks about the value and the benefits of failure. And I'll give you some links to that later. But I think failure should be a friend. I think failure and adopting failure is a great way to learn fast. We talk in Google about failing fast. And when I mentioned this to a friend recently, he just shook his head saying, what does that mean? Well, let me explain this to you. If I've got a diesel car and I drive up to the gas station or petrol station, I put in petrol as opposed to diesel. The earlier I recognize my mistake, the better, right? If I recognize that as I grab the nozzle, that's a good time to recognize that there's no cost, I can just go ahead. But the further I go along, if I fill up the tank, if I start to drive off, the more costly and pricey it becomes. The earlier you fail, the better. And the worst thing that we do, all of us, is to mask failure as success, fake success. It's a terrible thing. If you pretend that it's working and it's actually failing, then people will continue to do the wrong thing longer and longer. Rather, acknowledge the failure early and move on. And for you as leaders in this industry, I want to encourage you to create an atmosphere and a culture where it's good to fail. If people are not afraid to fail, then they would do incredible things. Conversely, people that are afraid do dumb things. So failing fast, failing productively, I think is a beautiful opportunity for all of us to learn quickly from our mistakes. Maybe it's worthwhile just telling you one personal story on this. I worked 10 years at another big IT company, and then I got approached by a venture capitalist saying, would you like to start a business for me? And I founded a new business, and at that time, I thought the business plan didn't make sense. But I plowed in very excitedly because I felt so honored by this chance to start a business. And I worked many years, and a lot of blood shed and tears, and my team worked like crazy. And at the end, it failed. And I'm so grateful for this failure to have taught me the benefit of failing early. If you got a gut feel, if you know something is wrong, flag it early on. Edison, who created the light bulb, had financial pressure on him. His investors told him, you have got 10,000 failures and you haven't been able to produce a light bulb. So Edison said to them, I haven't failed 10,000 times. I haven't even failed once. No, I now know of 10,000 ways not to build the light bulb. There are so many stories around Edison that I find inspiring in terms of failing and failure. His dad had a factory that burned down. Edison got to his dad. His dad was sitting on the pavement watching the flames of this factory burning down. All of his life savings in it, his whole business in it. Edison approached his dad. expecting him to be in tears and shattered. And his dad said, "Hey, I'm dreaming about my new factory that I'm going to build here." Right? Or the stories of his team dropping the light bulbs and Edison saying, "That's okay, you can carry it again." So plenty of stories there of failure, and I can probably spend all day on that. But let me just move on to the third one of these 3 behaviors that I think is important. In Google, we talk about 10x thinking. 10x as in 10 times. So there's a bizarre thing that's counterintuitive. Sometimes it's easier to improve things by 10 times than it is just to improve it by 10%. Let me say this again. Sometimes it's harder to improve something by 10% than it is to improve it 10 times. If you got a KPI that's chasing you to say you have to reach specific, I don't know, queue length numbers, specific time limits, etc., and you try and improve it by 10%, you might struggle. Let me give you another example to explain why and how this is. If I were to change the combustion engine, typical motor engine, and improve its efficiency by 10%, I'm going to struggle because there's already been years and years and years of research and investment in the materials and the fuel and the weight and everything else around it. So improving it by 1% is going to be tough. However, if I'm forced to think about how I dramatically improve the efficiency of it, then I can look beyond the boundaries that I set myself. And I can think, okay, maybe I don't need an engine. Maybe it is, I don't know, wind and a kite. Maybe it is not big wheels. Maybe it is a surfboard or a skateboard that I'm on. So by thinking 10 times improvements, sometimes things become much easier. And as an example of that, at Google, we've been thinking a lot about delivery of things, of physical things, and we think that it's terribly inefficient. If I place an order for, I don't know, a new clicker on Amazon, and a truck needs to leave a depot, drive all the way to Amazon, find a box that somebody has packed, and put it in the van, and then the van drives all the way to multiple points and eventually get to my house. On the way, it's causing traffic jams, it's polluting the planet, it's a heavy, big machine moving around, danger on the road, etc., etc. Surely there must be a more efficient way to do that. And there are many people in the industry doing some incredible, new, innovative things there. But this is one of Google's projects, and I'm telling you this story because there's a good fail-fast story in this as well. So this project is called Google Wing. It's basically, instead of a helicopter or quadcopter, it is a wing. The benefit of the wing is that it's much more efficient at flying like this. But normally, aeroplanes need a runway. So we've got a wing design that it can stand on its backside and take off like a helicopter, but then fly like a wing. And we use this in Australia to deliver snake antivenom. After one of our leaders said, "It's no longer good for you, team, to sit in your lab and work at this. Go deliver real value to customers. And once you've done that, you'll learn for real." And that's exactly what they did. As they were pushed out of the lab into Australia, starting to deliver real value, they quickly discovered some fundamental flaws in their thinking. And now we work on a completely redesign of this to be more efficient. So, fail-fast example from Google. There are plenty of fail-fast examples, by the way. So, just back to the 10x thinking, a big thinking. When we tackle a new problem, this is typically the 3 criteria we look at. We try and tackle something that's a huge problem, that's going to have massive impact. Don't invest your time and energy in a small problem, okay? That doesn't make sense. And then we try and tackle it where somebody's already got an idea as to how to solve it. So some proposal saying, here's what we think will solve the problem. And in the case of Google, we say there has to be some new technology that somehow now make it possible, which wasn't possible before. So if somebody's making a suggestion to solve a problem the same way as it was solved 100 years ago or attempted 100 years ago, and nothing changed fundamentally in the technology, then we'll skip it. But this the formula is really what defines what Google X is working on for new innovation. And I think there's a lot to learn there. So one example, and I want to emphasize this, I think innovation can be big, but innovation can also be something that you apply at a personal level. Okay? So one example of this is at a Google-wide level, we've got something called bureaucracy busters. So our previous CFO introduced this, Patrick Pichette, and what he would say is, let's list all the red tape things in the company that's holding you back from moving faster, and you have to come up with a proposal as to how it can be solved within 90 days, and then he commits upfront, before you even see the list, that he will do the top, I don't know, X number of those, 10 or 20 of those. And it's remarkable to see how one after the other thing in Google that might frustrate employees is actually addressed. So it's a great example of this. But on a personal level, I want to encourage you to think, what am I doing on a daily basis that's actually sapping my energy, that will have a huge impact on me, where technology might be able to help me, and where I can figure out a way to solve this. So one that I am currently working on is I'm trying to get less email addicted. Right? I think email in my life is forcing me to do the agenda of others. So I get an email, I respond to it. I'm trying to get to a proactive state where I actually do the things that I think is most important, rather than this. So I want to encourage you to think about things in your own life that you might be able to tackle and change. This is an inspirational story. Again, a fail fast example in there as well, but also a 10x thinking story. Google self-driving cars. The picture of it. This is about a 3-year-old picture. I'll tell you why in a moment. Last year, we've already done about 1 million kilometers driven by computer. So it's definitely coming. I'm looking forward to have these on the road before my daughter needs to learn how to drive. So this gentleman, Steve Mahan, he is a very special gentleman. He's one of the first people that is actually one of our customers for a self-driving car. And this picture is not the most beautiful picture, but it's a frame in a video that I took out because this really gave me goosebumps. This frame is where Steve is eating a taco. The first thing Steve did when he got a self-driving car was get in on his own, go to Taco Bell, and get a taco. And this is him driving while eating the Taco Bell. And Steve is blind. The freedom that the technology gives him just gives me goosebumps. Now that he's blind but can go where he wants to go on his own steam, just opens up a world of opportunity there. Let me tell you the fail fast story in this self-driving car evolution. So about 2 years ago, we started to give these cars to Googlers to drive with. So at that time, it was great to drive on the motorways. That's the easy bit. And the Googler would then take control and go to their home or go to the office. But the motorway bit, the car would just drive itself. And the deal was, as an employee, you could drive one, but you had to sign a piece of paper saying, I solemnly promise to keep my eyes on the road and be ready to take action when needed. Guess what? The employees, after the first or second day of driving these cars and seeing how effective the computer is, they started to sit back, started to maybe check an email or read a magazine or take a snooze. And the learning there was, with the onboard cameras we had watching the drivers, we realized we can't rely on having humans as a backup for computers. That just doesn't work. And this is a bit of innovation that I've recently come across that's also very dear to my heart. It's called Google Spoon or Liftware. What you see is a gentleman trying to take a bite of food. And he's got severe tremors in his hands. So let me just wait for the video. It's in a loop. So he's taking a normal spoon, and he can't keep the food there. Now he's using the Google Spoon, and the Google Spoon compensates for his tremors, allowing him to eat and get that dignity back. This is not a big self-driving car kind of innovation thing. This is individuals that spotted a problem and thought of the things they feel passionate about. In this case, it was an engineer that understood motion mechanics and said, I can compensate for that. I can detect the movement. I can use a gyroscope that's in every mobile phone and actually compensate for that in real time. This you can buy today. I'm just inspired by some of these solutions. So I want to finish, before I talk about the futures, the end of this chunk about us as humans, just recapping on Ebola. For starters, thank you for the incredible investment you are making in solving this incredible big problem. This morning session really brought my head knowledge to my heart and made me appreciate just the incredible cost to lives, both in terms of the patients, but also in terms of the healthcare professionals who's working on this. And as I started to look into this, what struck me was, I spoke to some of my colleagues that's been involved in our Ebola efforts, just how uncomfortable these suits are. We briefly touched on that this morning. But living in this suit that's designed to not let any air in or out, in very hot temperatures, very humid temperatures, is just very, very uncomfortable. And communicating while you've got this suit on is near impossible. Now consider that there's a big barrier between you and the rest of the team while you've got the suit on. And yet you need to somehow get the notes that can't leave the quarantine area back to your colleagues. So the answer is you have to sort of lean over the fence and shout, this is your findings and this is the medication needed. And you can't do that effectively, you can't hear effectively. So one of my colleagues, actually two of my colleagues in London, when Ebola struck, said, we want to work on this, we want to help solve this problem. And they took sort of basic Google technology that BMJ is using on a daily basis, Google Apps, and the concept of being able to communicate. And they said, can't we build a tool that will allow that kind of communication despite the lack of electricity, despite the lack of internet, etc. So that product you see there was built here in London by some of my colleagues. It's a Sony Tablet that's waterproof, wrapped in a special casing that makes it more hard-wearing, better battery life, suitable for the dusty conditions of the Ebola world. In fact, you can take this whole tablet and drop it in the chlorine bath every few minutes if you need to. And this is now used by some of the physicians there to capture the findings and request the medicines and have that available real time with other colleagues working together with them. So another inspiring story. So end of this chapter 2, and I've only got one more slide. Here, I just again want you to pause and think. If you had no fear of failure, if you followed your dream, and if you thought big and started in the area where you had influence, what is it that you should be doing right now rather than sitting here? Seriously, seriously. If I can get you to leave now and start to work on it, you should do that, right? If you want to grab a piece of paper and start to work on your plan, do that now, okay? If you had no fear, and if you can create an environment where your colleagues have got no fear for failure, if you can learn fast from your failure, if you could dream big, and if you could optimally tap into those special skills that each one of you have and everybody in your teams have, what incredible things could we see soon? Just a funny picture, talking about the future. So this was a man that sort of predicted virtual reality and so on many years ago, and I like the picture. And somebody said it looks a lot like me. Don't know. Let me give you briefly my view on where we're going in the future and the things we'll see more of in the future. So no surprise, the 4 things I mentioned in the beginning, smaller, cheaper, better connected, smarter, will all feature in the future. Okay? I think it will become more visible by technology becoming less visible. Let me try and say that again. Getting technology to disappear is, I think, the ideal. Technology should be intuitive, easy to use. There were comments this morning about how hard technology sometimes can be. If you find that, the technology is wrong. Technology should be supporting us. So the design point of Google Glass was, how do we get technology out of the way? So I am very hopeful that we are moving towards getting to a point where technology can really be assistive and predictive and supportive and out of the way. I would love you to spend more time talking to people than in front of a computer. That's where we're going. And I already see snippets of that happening in my daily life. If those of you using Gmail, it's a long-solved problem of spam has gone away, but we've done the same with regards to finding the priority things, bubbling up the things that's really important. And my inbox is getting smarter and smarter. It's currently also highlighting to me my travel plans when I need it. Or it's detecting if I need to call somebody back and there's instruction in email, then that will pop up as an action, rather than me having to pass through all the emails to get that. Why is it that you and I, when we want to meet, need to send 10 emails amongst each other saying, oh yes, you want to meet, when do you meet? I'm available Friday, where would you, which coffee shop? Okay, I'll be there. Are you? Our systems should be doing that talking. Your system will talk to my system and we will just meet. That's where we need to get to, right? And I expect us to see more robots. Now, I know there's a fear of robots in general, so I just want to quickly alleviate that fear. The first robot that I knew of was the one at Oxford Circus. That was a traffic light, as the Brits now call it. South Africans still call them robots. In fact, the whole of South Africa is still full of robots, traffic lights. The first robot we had in our home was when I was a young boy. It never worked, so I had to wash the dishes. But now the robot in my wife's kitchen does wash the dishes for us. It's called a dishwasher. I'm looking forward to it becoming more proactive, to sort of pack itself and switch itself on and so on, but we'll get there. But I expect robots and smart computers and smart technology to become smarter at helping us do our jobs more effectively. And then, my last prediction, no, not prediction, prediction and hope, is that in the next few years, you would create incredible new things that solve fantastically big problems, that save lives, that improve the quality of people's lives. And I will be privileged to have been part of the journey. Thank you.